Mount Athos. St. Porphyrios is one of the great modern-day saints. Perhaps many of us don't know about him because he's so recent. There are many books in English already, a half a dozen or more, about his life, about his teachings, about his miracles. Famous one, Wounded by Divine Love, is a classic book already. St. Porphyrios has many things that he shares with us, many things that he teaches us. He teaches us by his words. He was a person that's contemporary of ours. He used the telephone. He gave spiritual directions on the phone. That he used modern communications. He spent a good portion of his life among the people. When he was 12 years old, he left his family secretly and went to Mount Athos. And he stayed there for 7 years. And he couldn't stay because he developed illness. And so he left Athos, came back, and finally they said, don't come back anymore because your health is too precarious. So his desire to be a monk on Mount Athos for all his life was never realized. And so he went back to his area of Evia, and he became a monk there. And he spent some 15 years there in Evia as a monk, priest. He was ordained a priest at the age of 21. He was a very pious person. And then he spent the next 33 years in the city of Athens, in the Polyclinic, in the center of Athens, as a chaplain there in the hospital caring for the people. And he had a little church outside where he would serve on the holy days and Sundays. After that, the rest of his life, some 18 plus years, he spent in the monastery of St. Nicholas and then founded the Transfiguration Monastery in Melesi. The monasteries in Evia and the monasteries of St. Nicholas and Transfiguration, these were monasteries that were in central Greece. People came there all the time. Father Porphyrios had discussion. He had interchange with these people all his life. And so he was amongst the people. Although he was a monk, he was very strict with himself. But he was amongst the people, preaching to them, teaching them, helping them, healing them. He was gifted with a great gift of spiritual clairvoyance. When you read his life, you'd be amazed. Read his life, you'd be amazed. He could see things of the past. He would be on the road, and he'd ask the driver, stop, I want to see the monastery here. And the driver said, there's no monastery there. There's just old ruins of a building. He said, no. There's a monastery here. It was dedicated to this saint. And this was the building. And this is when it was established. And this is where the well border was. And this is where the nuns were. And these were their names. He had no knowledge of that. It was the gifted knowledge that he had. People would ask him to go to help them to discern where water was. With his eyes, he was able to see under the ground, hundreds and hundreds of feet below, and to say, this is where the water is, but don't drill here because it's salty water. He was able to see things from afar. He would see his elders come on Mount Athos, and he would come out to greet them and say, how did you know we were coming? Well, I saw you over the mountain. How did you see us? Well, I saw you with my eyes, that you stumbled there on this place. It was a gift that he was given. He was able, in the hospital where he worked, people would receive their health benefits, and he would say to them, no, let me examine you. And he would examine them with his spiritual eyes. He would say, you don't need the surgery. Don't have the surgery done. That this is what you really need. And so there are many miracles in his life that talk about his miracles, his healings, his wonders, his wonderful teachings. Well, what could we say about St. Porphyrios that we could get some spiritual benefit for ourselves? First of all, we should really read his life and read about his miracles. It's like the Acts of the Apostles. It's the tremendous spiritual power and love of God that's manifested there. But let's say that there are 3 things that we could learn from the elder St. Porphyrios that could be helpful for us. And the first thing is this, is that if you want to sum up the life of St. Porphyrios and his teachings, it's in one sentence. The love of Christ is the answer for all things. The love of Christ is the answer for all things. What all things? Troubles, tribulations, afflictions, sins, passions, disagreements, failures, blessings, whatever it is, positive or negative, the love of Christ is the answer for all those things. In other words, it gives meaning to all things. It defines everything. It makes us have the right standing in our life, in relation to people, places, and things. It's the love of Christ. And this is the central message that he has. St. Porphyrios, since he dealt with people all the time, and when he built his monastery, the Transfiguration, he made sure that it was built in such a way that pilgrims would come. He would say, we have to build it this way so that they get lots of sunlight, so that they're happy and they can rejoice in the sun. That we have to do this so that they would find themselves comfortable here. That everything was a consideration for others. St. Porphyrios was a person who saw that Christians, then as Christians today, some 27 years later, that Christians are weighed down. And they're weighed down by negativity, by anxiety, depression, stress, despondency, laziness. That they're weighed down, that there's no joy in the life of so many Christians. That they find themselves burdened and that the Christian faith doesn't carry them up. That they have a faith but it doesn't do anything. Think of it this way. You could come into the church. You could see everything. You could hear everything. You could even taste. But it doesn't mean you're in the church. Well, what do you mean you're in the church? Well, you're in the church, but the church is not in you. But when you come to the church, you have to encounter the church, the people of God. You have to encounter the high priest, Jesus Christ. You have to sing with the angels. That you have to feel the presence of the holy saints. As a church is consecrated and holy and dedicated to the Lord and serves the purpose of the Lord, we, the living temples, when we come into the temple, have to be the same way. Consecrated, holy, dedicated to the Lord, and then there's a spiritual, mystical encounter that takes place. And often this doesn't take place, because even when we're in the church, we're not in the church. There's just a story of Peter the Great. Peter the Great went to the church, and there was a certain bishop, Metrophon of Voronezh, who was a very brave man, and he contradicted Peter the Great on many things. And after the service, he said, "How was your hunting today, Peter?" He says, "I didn't hunt today. I was here in the church." He says, "No, you weren't. Your body was here, but your mind and your heart and your desire was out in the woods hunting. So don't say you were in church." It's the same thing with us. That we could be here and not here. We could be in the presence of the Lord and not feel the presence of the Lord. And that's something that is negative. That we have to come and desire to be in the presence of the Lord. So what are the three things that St. Porphyrios shares with us? The first is that everything, always, in every place, is an opportunity to be made holy, to be sanctified. We're sanctified in the church, or we can be sanctified in the church. Doesn't mean we are being sanctified. We can be sanctified in our married life. We can be made holy on the sick day. We can be sanctified and holy at places of work, at places of relaxation. St. Porphyrios said to people, when you're depressed, what do you like to do? You like music? Play music. You like to swim? Go swimming. In other words, give your body relaxation. Give it something positive so that it becomes something strong for you, a citadel of strength, not a vessel of weakness. St. Porphyrios, he says this. He says, it is a great art, to succeed in having your soul become holy. A person can become holy anywhere. He can become a saint in Ammonia Square if he wants. Well, Katarina knows what Ammonia Square is. Ammonia Square is it's the Times Square of Athens. Times Square of Athens. And Times Square in New York is noted for, well, whatever it's noted for. It has been noted in the past for vice and pleasure and all kinds of things. The evil things and the negative things. So he's saying that in the worst place, you can be made holy. At your work, whatever it may be, you can become saints. But how, he says? Through meekness, patience, and love. Meekness, patience, and love. But these are the conditions we need become holy. He says, for each one of us, he says, every day make a new start. Every day, a new start. With new resolution. This is what I resolved to do today. With enthusiasm. To be enthusiastic about coming into the holiness of the Lord. And love and prayer and silence. He says, but don't do anything with anxiety, so that you get pain in the chest. As I was saying, all things, positive and negative things for us, can become occasions for the glorification of God, for our own well-being. Don't look at what is happening to us, to ourselves, but rather look unto Christ. A child, when it's anxious, when it has needs, it doesn't look to itself. The child that needs something, it looks to its mother. And the mother is the one who provides. The mother is the one who consoles. The mother is the one who loves. The mother is the one that the child will cling to. So he says the same thing for us in our life. Cling to the Lord, to Jesus Christ. But all too often we look at ourselves and we see what is defective, what is negative, what is hurting. And we kind of sink in that instead of looking to the Lord. And Porphyrios says life is what it is. The good, the bad, the ugly. But he says redeem it, sanctify it, make it holy. So this is the first thing we can learn. That our calling is to be holy in every place that we are, in everything that we do. The second thing he teaches us is a very great spiritual lesson, and that's on spiritual struggle. He says many Christians struggle in their spiritual life. That they pray, they fast, they repent, they go to confession, and then they find themselves falling again. That they don't achieve their end. That there's no success in what they're doing. And because of this, they do this and do this again and again, and they fail and fail and fail again. And spiritually, they become anxious, depressed, stressed out. They say, well, why? It's the same old thing. I can't make any progress in my spiritual life. St. Porphyrios says, well, it could be that you have to change your methodology of spiritual struggle. This classical spiritual struggle that the church has revealed to us today in the Epistle of Paul. Put on the armor of faith, the shield, the helmet, the sword, battle. Struggle against the fiery darts of the evil one. The evil fires of the darts set the evil spirits on high, the devils they sent to us. The classical Christian teaching is to fight, to struggle against the passions, to win the soul, to weed out the sins, the passions, to weed this out, and to think of ourselves as sinners, and to offer repentance to the Lord. And to hit ourselves, God cleanse me a sinner, have mercy on me. God cleanse me a sinner, have mercy on me. God cleanse me a sinner, have mercy on me. This is the classical teaching of the church, and it's correct and it's true. But it's not the only way. It's not the only way St. Porphyrios teaches us. He says that this is the hard way. This is the bloody way. This is the way of the monastics. He says, I've myself experienced this as a monk. That I was trained in this way. But then he says, but you, and he's talking to the lay people here. He says, but you, I suggest a different way to you. A different way. A way that is not bloody. A way that is safe. A way that is short. A way that is gentle, he says. And what is that? Well, he says this. He says, do not choose negative methods to correct yourselves. That means to be weighed down by guilt, to offer to the Lord these things in a guilty way. There is no need to fear the devil, hell, or anything else. He says, employ the gentle method. He says, don't struggle to expel the darkness and evil from yourself. You can achieve nothing by flapping about in the darkness. Are you in the darkness and you want to escape? What do? Well, you assault the darkness with all your might, but it doesn't go away. He says this. He says, you fight against the devil. You shoot a bullet. What does the devil do? Well, he throws a hand grenade at you. So you use something more powerful. You throw a bomb at the devil. What does the devil do? He launches a rocket against you. In other words, the devil is too powerful. So he says, don't fight the devil. Don't contest with him. You will not become holy by hounding after the evil one. Look to Christ, and he will save you. Instead of standing outside the door shooing the devil away, just treat him with disdain. Don't pay attention to him. Don't fight against him. Just ignore him completely. If evil approaches from one direction, then calmly turn in the opposite direction. He says further, open in your soul a little hole, and a ray of sunlight will enter, and the light of Christ will come. Instead of expelling darkness and fighting the enemy to prevent him from entering into you, open your arms to Christ's embrace. This is the most perfect way. That is, don't wage war on evil directly, but rather love Christ, and evil will retreat. The advice of St. Porphyrios is something we should really consider, because each one of us in our spiritual life, we stumble all the time. And what we offer is not the methodology of a perfection. We offer the methodology of negative things. The classical fathers say, in your soul, weed the weeds of passion and sin. Work on that negativity, get it out. St. Porphyrios says, it's a way to be done, but he says, I recommend a more safe and gentle way for you. And he says, don't care about the weeds. Don't care about the passions in your soul. Some fathers will say, what? How could you not be concerned about that? St. Porphyrios says, they will be taken care of by Christ. Why are you working on your passions? You let Christ work on your passions. What do you have to work on? He says, the only thing you have to work on is love for Christ. And if you have love for Christ, Christ increases the love for you. And the passions and the sins and the negativity that you have in your spiritual life, it will dissipate. Again, Christ is the answer for all things in life. And so, the soul is sanctified and perfected by the teachings of the saints, by reading of psalms, the portions of scriptures, singing of spiritual hymns, and the Jesus prayer. So these are the means that he recommends for us. And he says when we go to confession, we confess our sins and we're ashamed. We say that's the same sins I'm confessing. Well, confess them humbly, ask for forgiveness, and then forget about it. Forget about it. Don't leave the church and say, well, I'm probably going to do that. No, don't do that. Your sins are forgiven, they're forgotten. It's old, it's destroyed, it's not there anymore. And remember what he said at the beginning. Start every day new, with a new resolution, a new enthusiasm, with meekness, prayer, and silence, and patience. Start each day anew. And what we can't do and accomplish, Christ, who loves us, will accomplish it. In other words, we have to throw ourselves on the love of Christ, and not be so engaged in the attempt of spiritual struggle, this kind of fighting with our passions, fighting with our personal history, fighting with each other, fighting with the demons. He says, that's not the way to go. When people engage in this, some people, it's even more harmful for them, because they become spiritually depressed because it doesn't work. The third thing. He says, the third thing that we could think about is how we deal with others. First he says, you can't judge other people. You can't have hostility against other people. But even when people are in the wrong, you leave that to the Lord. If they do something wrong, we can't condone behavior, no. But we don't judge them. We judge the action, yes, but we don't judge them. And our response to them should be one of helping. It should be one of concern. It should not be one of judgment or condemnation. He says this. He says, first of all, in regard to others, our brothers, our family, our friends, our acquaintances, He says, love towards one another cultivates love towards God. Sometimes we think we love God, but, well, I love this one, but I don't love this one. It can't be done. We are happy when we secretly love all people. But if there are people that we hate, well, the love of God can't be in us. Then we feel that everyone loves us. No one can attain to God unless he first passes through his fellow men. And then he quotes here St. John the Theologian in his epistle. St. John says this, "For the person who does not love his brother whom he sees, how can he love God whom he doesn't see?" So we need to love and sacrifice ourselves selflessly for everyone, without seeking recompense. We love them because God loves them. A love that seeks anything in return, well, I'm going to love you, but what are you going to do for me? No. A love that seeks anything in return is selfish. It is not genuine, it's not pure, it's not sincere. But without love, he says without love, he says, we do things for others and it's of no avail. He says this, if we don't love others and we pray for them, it's of no benefit. If we don't love others and we give them advice, that advice is oftentimes hurtful. If we don't love others and we point out the errors in their life, this is harmful and destructive to that person. Because this person senses whether we love him or not. And that person reacts accordingly. And so what does it say? It says, love, love, love. Love for our brother prepares us to love Christ even more. And so when we love one another, and we seek the good of each other, this increases our love for the Lord. That we draw closer to the Lord by drawing closer to one another. Finally this, he says, when we see people around us who have no love for God, people that we would deem evil perhaps, that we are distressed by this. But often this distress achieves nothing at all. It doesn't help that person. It doesn't help us. Nor do we achieve anything by trying to persuade that person to change their ways. There is a secret, however, and if we understand it, we will be able to help that person. And this secret is our prayer and devotion to God, that the grace of God may act in that person. We ourselves, with our love, with our fervent desire for the love of God, we will attract grace to ourselves, so that it washes over those around us and awakens them to divine love. Or rather to say, God will send his love and will rouse them. Living faith, St. Porphyrios teaches us, living faith that is non-judgmental, that doesn't condemn, that seeks the good of the other, by loving and praying and loving for the other, that this living faith, it moves people, it regenerates them, and changes them. Whereas our words alone and our desire for them remain fruitless. And so let us think, as we honor St. Porphyrios this day, of these three things. That we're made to be holy, we can be holy in every place. And that's our vocation. Whatever it is, if it's good or bad in our life, whatever the situation is, we can't say, well, when this mess is cleaned up, I could focus on being holy. No. Whatever the situation is, good or bad, positive or negative, we have to be made holy there. And Christ makes us holy. The second thing is, find the spiritual method that works best for you. If it's a classical method, do it. If it's not working, you might want to try the gentle message and method that St. Porphyrios offers to us. And the third thing is, be sure that our own spiritual life is contingent with one another. That we're individuals that are in communion with each other. And our concern and love has to be for the other. But it has to be motivated not by correction, not by self-righteousness, but by genuine love for them. And that love is rooted in prayer. St. Porphyrios, he teaches his people, don't be anxious, don't be stressed out, don't be despondent, don't be confused, don't be negative in your life. Build on what is positive. Whatever those things in life that will give you enjoyment, that are pleasing to the Lord. Sports, even certain entertainments, vacations, whatever it is that will build you up spiritually. But he says in all these things, you have to be a person of prayer. You have to be a person that is meek of heart. In other words, that you're soft in your heart. Soft in what way? Well, soft that the Lord is able to mold your heart to what is needful for yourself and for the benefit of others. Don't be proud. Don't be arrogant. Don't think that you know it all. Be meek. Let the Lord work in you. And be patient. Live without anxiety. Live simply and gently with faith in the Lord. The bottom line of St. Porphyrios is the bottom line of all Christians, basically, of all Christian teachings, is that the love of Christ is the answer for everything.